The eastern edge of NATO territory, early morning, sometime in the near future. The frost is still on the grass. The diesel exhaust from a column of vehicles hangs in air too cold and too still to disperse it. Somewhere beyond the tree line, an engine note has been running for 48 hours without stopping. The satellite imagery is unambiguous. The rail lines are saturated. The field hospitals went up 3 nights ago. The electronic jamming started shortly after. Every analyst who has looked at this picture in the last 72 hours has reached the same conclusion, and nobody wants to say it out loud. But this time, Russia crosses. Not a probe. Not a hybrid operation with deniable little green men and manufactured ambiguity. A declared, full-spectrum ground-in invasion of a NATO member state. The threshold that the entire post-Cold War security order was built, funded, and argued over for 7 decades to prevent. So here's the question that matters. Does NATO hold? And what does holding actually cost? Now, this is a thought experiment, not a classified briefing. There are gaps in what any of us can know, but the force structures, the doctrine, and the vulnerabilities are all real. So let's treat the scenario seriously. Russia's theory of victory is not complicated. It is fast. The core idea, refined over years of wargaming and sharpened by watching Western political dysfunction up close, is the fait accompli. Move armored columns into a Baltic state, reach the capital within 48 to 72 hours, and then present NATO with a choice that is worse than accepting the loss. Fight to retake an occupied alliance capital, with all the escalation risk that entails, or negotiate from a position of humiliation. The logic assumes NATO's political machinery is too slow, too fractured, and too afraid of escalation to respond before the ground facts are established. That assumption deserves respect, because it is not unreasonable. Russia's military has real advantages that analysts who want a clean story tend to undercount. Its artillery doctrine is mature and battle-tested. Its electronic warfare capability, built on years of live operational experience, can blind, jam, and disorient a force that relies on networked communications. Its integrated air defense network, anchored by long-range surface-to-air missile systems, is among the densest ever fielded. And behind all of it, sitting at the foundation of every calculation both sides make, is an arsenal of roughly 5,500 nuclear warheads. That is not a detail. That is the entire geometry of the problem. The Suwałki Gap is where the scenario focuses. It is a stretch of land roughly 65 miles wide, about the distance between 2 mid-sized cities, separating Belarus from the Russian exclave of Kaliningrad on the Baltic coast. Close it, and the 3 Baltic states are severed from the rest of NATO by land. Kaliningrad is already heavily militarized, home to short-range ballistic missile systems capable of reaching every Baltic capital. Russian planners have been studying this corridor for longer than most of the soldiers who would fight over it have been alive. NATO's forward presence in the region is real, but deliberately thin. The tripwire battalions, roughly 1,000 to 1,500 troops per nation, were never designed to stop a Russian armored advance. They were designed to die in contact with one, ensuring that any Russian move immediately becomes a war with the entire alliance, rather than a localized border incident. They know exactly what they are. They hold as long as they hold. Here is what is waiting on the other side of that calculus. NATO's combined defense spending in recent years has exceeded $1 trillion annually, an amount that is difficult to make human scale until you consider that it represents more money than the entire GDP of most countries on Earth, spent every single year on weapons, training, and systems that have been designed specifically for this scenario. 32 member nations, over 3.5 million active personnel. The United States alone fields the most sophisticated intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance architecture ever assembled, capable of tracking hundreds of moving targets across hundreds of miles in real time, streaming data to commanders before the targets know they have been found. The F-35 flies faster than the speed of sound and carries targeting systems that can resolve individual vehicles from altitudes where it is invisible to the naked eye. HIMARS precision rocket artillery, the same system that restructured battlefield geometry in Ukraine, can place a warhead on a specific vehicle from 70 kilometers away in roughly the time it takes to read this sentence. Patriot and THAAD batteries can intercept ballistic missiles in terminal phase. And NATO's cyber capabilities, details of which are not publicly advertised, can reach into an adversary's command and control networks before a conventional shot is fired. The asymmetry in the air is not subtle. Russia's fifth-generation fighter fleet is believed to number fewer than 20 operational airframes. NATO fields hundreds of F-35s across multiple members, with more arriving each year. That gap is not a fair fight. It is a different category of contest. Hour 0. 3 mechanized columns cross into Estonian territory simultaneously before dawn. The tripwire battalions engage immediately, not to stop the advance, but to confirm it, to generate the casualties that formally trigger Article 5, and to buy hours. The sound of that contact, the flat percussion of modern artillery at distance, is indistinguishable from thunder to civilians in Tallinn, 90 kilometers west, until it is not. NATO's airborne surveillance aircraft are already orbiting over Poland and the Baltic Sea when the crossing happens. The intelligence picture is complete within minutes. 5 pre-planned target packages exist for exactly this scenario. Political authorization, pre-delegated for an Article 5 crossing under contingency orders, does not wait for a morning Security Council meeting. In the lead Russian battalion, the company commander notices the silence before he notices anything else. His radio net goes quiet all at once. Not jamming, which has a texture, a static you can hear. Total absence. His navigation system shows him stationary. His vehicle is moving. The drone his unit launched 20 minutes ago to scout the road ahead simply stopped transmitting mid-feed. He has deployed before. He is trained for electronic warfare degradation. He has never experienced it like this. A clean erasure of the electromagnetic environment his entire tactical picture depends on, arriving without warning and without explanation. Then, the column behind him, the fuel trucks, and the ammunition carriers that the entire advance depends on, erupts. Not one vehicle. 4 in under 10 seconds, as precision rockets walk down the road with an accuracy that feels targeted rather than statistical. The sound reaches him after the light. A flat crack, then a secondary bloom of heat that he feels on the back of his neck through the vehicle armor before he understands what produced it. The smell of burning diesel in cold air carries for kilometers. Soldiers 200 meters ahead of the fire do not know for several seconds whether they are next. F-35s flying at altitudes where contrails are invisible suppress the air defense network around Kaliningrad, opening corridors for follow-on strikes. HIMARS batteries positioned well behind the contact line engage Russian artillery parks that have been tracked and cataloged for 3 days. The columns that were supposed to reach Tallinn in 48 hours find their logistics chain burning 80 kilometers from the border. On day 2, the nuclear signaling begins. A single ballistic missile, conventional warhead, is fired from Kaliningrad into the Baltic Sea, 30 kilometers off the Lithuanian coast, close enough that the smoke column is visible from shore. The message is not ambiguous. It does not need to be. The question it poses to NATO is the real weapon. Will the alliance pause? This is where every previous war game in the last 30 years reaches its most uncomfortable moment. In the room where NATO's North Atlantic Council is meeting, the weight of that question is a physical thing. Every person present understands that the next decision either validates or destroys the deterrent logic that has prevented this war for 75 years. A pause confirms that nuclear signaling works. It tells every future adversary the price of coercion. NATO does not pause. The Iskander sites that were not neutralized on day 1 are targeted and destroyed within 6 hours of the demonstration shot. The signal back is deliberate. Conventional escalation will be met conventionally. The nuclear threshold has not moved, but everyone in that room knows it is closer than it was yesterday. By day 4, Russian air defenses in the operational area have been systematically degraded. The armored columns that were supposed to be entering Tallinn are dug into defensive positions 90 kilometers short of it. The fait accompli has failed. And now comes the part nobody's press release covers. But here's where it gets complicated. NATO has won the first battle, clearly and decisively. The conventional mismatch. Once the alliance is politically unified, and its full ISR and precision fires architecture is engaged, is not a close contest. But winning the first battle is not ending the war. Russia still exists. Its nuclear arsenal still exists. And a nuclear-armed state that is losing conventionally within its own strategic perimeter is the most dangerous variable in the known universe of geopolitics. NATO cannot invade Russia. Not a capability limitation. A survival calculation. The alliance can defend, can expel, can destroy Russian forces in the operational area. It cannot march on Moscow without accepting escalation risks that make every other outcome preferable. So NATO achieves its military objective and then faces a war it cannot end by force against an adversary that has not been defeated, only stopped. The munitions question surfaces within the first 2 weeks. Precision-guided inventories are not bottomless. European members, several of whom have spent years rebuilding stockpiles that decades of post-Cold War drawdown hollowed out, begin running sustainability calculations that produce uncomfortable answers. The United States can sustain the air campaign. The political sustainability of the coalition is a different metric, measured in refugee flows across borders, energy prices spiking in ways that voters notice, and the particular domestic pressure that comes from a war that is being won but will not end. The ceasefire, when it comes, does not look like victory. Russian forces are back across the border. The exchange of prisoners is ugly and slow. European cities that absorbed missile strikes during the campaign are rebuilding infrastructure. NATO's munitions stocks will take years to reconstitute. And the nuclear question has not been answered. It has been moved. Down the road to the next crisis, which will arrive carrying the memory of this one. What the scenario actually reveals is this. Deterrence was never a switch. It was a calculation that both sides were running simultaneously, every day, updating as evidence came in. The war did not happen because one side miscalculated the other's capability. It happened because one side miscalculated the other's will. And the cost of correcting that miscalculation is paid by people who had nothing to do with the original calculation. The soldiers who were there, on both sides, will not talk about the weapons when they describe it to their children. Russian veterans will talk about the moment the radios went silent, not the strike that followed. The silence before it, which lasted long enough for a man to understand, with full clarity, that something had already happened that he would not be able to explain. Baltic civilians who watched missile intercepts trace white arcs over their cities in the dark will describe the seconds of not knowing whether the intercept worked, which is a different kind of experience than any weapon produces directly. In Estonian memory, the phrase that survives will not be a military designation or a treaty name. It will be something quieter, something about the road east of the city and the point where the advance stopped. No monument marks it, just a kilometer post on the highway, a number on a green sign. That means nothing to anyone passing through, and everything to the people who understand why the column never got further than that.